Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Baron here. We are looking at the first glimpses, maybe, of patch 1.55. We are on the dev server. This is an A13 Mark I. You're familiar with it. Let's show something that you may have not seen. Crusader Mark II. Tetrarch Mark I. A glider-borne tank, mind you. And here we go, something awesome. The first armored car we'll get to see, we'll get to play in War Thunder. The T-17E2. And then finally we have the A13 Mark II 1939. We also have a premium. Check this out, we only have tier 1 Brits right now. And then there's the A13 Mark I 3rd Royal Tank Regiment. A light tank, battle rating 1.0. Basically, excuse me, the same thing as the stock one, but it's the premium one, similar to how there's premium planes and tanks that are basically going to help you get in. But this one has a price of 250 golden eagles. So let's just plop that in there. And now let's take a look at the modifications, kind of go over all of them. We've also got some other vehicles to go over, planes, tanks, and the like for the other nations. But I found this one pretty interesting. This is the Churchill tank. The only Churchill tank in the game right now is actually a German one. It is 1,300 golden eagles. Everything is subject to change. This is only the dev server. Flight models oftentimes are not accurate for the planes. I would imagine tank models may be similar. Prices as well. But here is a German Churchill. Look at how freaking gorgeous this tank is. It is an absolute beast. We'll cover that a little later. But let's first go over... Actually, you know what? Let's do a cursory view. This is going to be something that might scare a few people. Look at this. Alright, so we're going to go down to our medium tanks. Oh, there's a T-44. Right? Where are you now? T-44 122. Look at this. It's got a 122 millimeter main D2544T gun. T44 tank chassis. Let's see, battle rating of 6.3. Well, we're on arcade. Normally I have this set to realistic. Let's see if it changes. So battle rating 6.3 compared to the T44, which also has a battle rating of 6.3. Now you go from an 85 millimeter main gun to a 122 millimeter main gun. Considerable difference, but a difference nonetheless. Battle rating not at all different. So let's preview this thing. I'm curious. The armor should be the same, but look at how freaking beastly of a gun that is. 75 millimeters. I wanted to see how it affects the turret, because that is a huge gun sticking out of this. Radio station. The commander, the loader, and the aimer, or the gunner rather. Big old ammunition stacks right there. That's pretty indicative of most T-44s. But anyway, so we've got, that is, let's see. That's all of the new tanks right now. Just the Germans got the Churchill. The Russians got this T-44 122, so they both have premiums. The Brits got basically all these reserve tanks, reserve and tier 1 tanks, as well as armored cars. I'm so excited for that. Can we please get a Puma hype? I mean, come on. I'm excited for the Puma. And then a premium A13 Mark I, which, just like the reserve tank. Now moving on to planes. This is where there's a few interesting planes mixed in here. First is the F3F2, which is basically, if you look at it, it's a Buffalo. It's a Buffalo with a, basically a bi-wing Buffalo. That's what I would call it, more or less. You've got 150 cal and 130 cal machine gun, 200 rounds for the M2, 500 for the 30 cal. And then the Germans, there's the Germans, here they are. You've got a new Junkers 88. Let's find you in the tech tree. It's a JU-88A1. Now is this... Where's the JU-88A1? This is on the patch notes. Ju-88A1. Okay, so we have the A4 in the game, right, with a battle rating of 2.0. The Ju-88A1 also has a battle rating of 2.0. It's got 3 7.92 gunners. This one has 1 7.92 and 2 13 millimeters. So the same battle rating seems a little strange, given that the gunners are different. This one are different. What the tits? What the tits am I saying? Looks like this guy can go up to 1,000 kilos of bombs. And the A4 can go up to 1,500 kilos of bombs. So there's definitely a difference between the A1 and the A4. I was hoping for the Ju-88, which wasn't there one armed with a 75? But there's definitely a Ju-88 out there that's armed with a big gun, a 50 millimeter plus. There's also an Italian bomber, 4-engine bomber, that is armed with a 102 millimeter main gun, and I would love to see the Italians have their own tech tree. There are some brilliant and beautiful Italian fighters that are not in the game, but were in World War II and were being developed. But that is a discussion for another video. So now moving on from the Germans. So nothing too exciting for the Germans, and a low tier plane for the Americans. Now moving to the Russians, arguably they get the this is absurd. Look at this. The MiG-17. And I feel like if you think about it, the different nations, well, I mean, Russia and the United States seem to kind of alternate who's got the top plane in the game. I remember when the game first came out, the Germans actually did really, really well way back in the day. But anyway, the Russians dominated with the MiG-15s, and the Americans had their Sabres. The Sabres had their day, and now it looks like the MiG-17 is entered into the game. And if you guys would like to start discussion in the comments below, I highly encourage you to do so, as to what you guys think would be a competent opposing jet for this bad boy here. You know, a few ideas just off the top of my head are the FJ-23 Fury, the XF-10F Jaguar, the F-3H Demon, and then the RF has some options maybe in the Sea Vixen or the Gloucester Javelin. But you know what? That is also a discussion for another day. But this bad boy is going to be nasty. A 37 millimeter primary. Well, not primary. I'm speaking tanks, man. I'm thinking like a tanker, but this is definitely a jet jockey's plane. And we've got two 23s right here. Battle rating 9.0. Oh my god, this thing's going to be so expensive to purchase. But it looks like for you high-tier jet jockeys, you've got something else that's going to be ruling the skies and changing things up for you. And now we go to the Japanese. Well, actually, let's get to the British first. The British, so nothing too much for the Americans, the Germans, or the Russians, but the British definitely get something in the Stirling B, Mark I, and Mark III bombers. So let's look at this. I'm going to look at the gunners first. That's just how I think about bombers for me personally, is their defensive armament before I think about primary armament, unless, of course, it's something like the Mk.I, which has a 5,000 kilogram nuclear bomb, basically. It's not actually a nuclear bomb, but we like to call it that because it's pretty beastly. So the Brits have a 4-engine bomber between the 2-engine Wellingtons and the 4-engine Lancasters. But if you look at the gunners, it's all 7.7 millimeter main guns. Let's see, that's 4 plus 4. So this has 9 7.7s. Let's take a look at it. And kind of, it's 250,000 silver lions. It's a very British looking bomber, needless to say, in both the good ways and the silly ways. Not as round, more box-like than the American bombers. But it looks like you've got some guns in the front. There were some really, really cool. I want to do some in-depth videos as to some of the bombers that I would like in the game, because I really do enjoy bombers, and I think they would be fun to look at that. So that's the quad 7.7 back there on the tail, which is pretty decent. You've got this dorsal turret that can rotate pretty well. Now, do we have anything on the bottom of this plane? That seems to me like, well, we got, what is that right here would be one of them? Show armor. Show x-ray. Okay, this guy's basically peeing into the machine gun, but okay. In a more serious note here, the quad, there's one down there, there's a dual right there, and then there's this up front. So very interesting armament. Coming at it, there's a huge weak area relative to some of the other heavy bombers. I mean, it's no flying fortress. It doesn't even have 50 cals. All right, but now let's look at the bomb load on this bad boy. 9 1,000 pounders at a battle rating of 5.0. It's got 9,000 bombs. Holy shit. Now divide this by 2. 1,400. 14,000. 14.5 thousand pounds. No, 13.5 thousand pounds of bombs. So with your 500s, you can definitely carry more poundage. This is a serious bomber. If only it had better defensive armament, I think it would have better survivability. I flew out my the Wellingtons with Squire and Slick the other day, and Bill, and we got absolutely wrecked. And part of that was because our defensive armament was just not up to par, and that's just how the British bombers are. So now we've got the Stirling B Mark III. It seems to be a little different, actually. Let's go X-ray on it. It's different setup. Yeah, there's no gunner on the bottom of this thing anymore. You've got, so it actually loses a gunner. And the rest of it's the same, so it actually loses one of the gunners. And they were all 7.7s, correct? Yeah, all 7.7s, modifications. It has the same bomb load, so I would imagine maybe it goes a little quicker or something like that. But this one comes in, what would be the price of it? But yeah, so the Stirling heavy bombers here fitting in at 5.0 and 5.3 for the British, between the Wellingtons and the Lancasters, those Lancs. And then, you know what? So, and now we finally get to the Japanese, and tell you what, they get 4 new planes. Let's go with the Kpfw. Where are you at? The Kpfw Itaehin, and obviously my Japanese pronunciation is probably lacking. But let's take a look at this. Battle rating of 4.3. We're already familiar with the Ki-61s, and this was actually the plane that, for me, was the first plane that I really started flying in RB that I really enjoyed way back in the day, maybe in patch 1.27 or 0.29 days. The good old days, So, let's see, this one's got 2 20s and 2 12.7s. This one's got 2 20s and 2 12.7s. Ho 5, Ho 103. This one has German MG 151s. And this one has Japanese 20 millimeters, the Ho 5s, 240 rounds, so about 120 rounds per gun. 150 rounds per gun here, but probably better flying characteristics for this. Let's take a look at it. So there's the pilot. Beautiful looking plane. I love the Ki-61s. Really cool looking planes. So that is the Ki-61 Itae. Now we've got an A7M2, and we have the A7M1, which we've already seen, and is a very, very formidable plane. A very good turn fighter. Got pretty good 20s, and it's also armed with 13.2s instead of 12.7s or small 7.6s, 7.7s. No, yeah. So we got the A7M1, which is the premium we've seen recently. This is the A7M2. Battle rating 5.3 compared to battle rating 3.3. Let's see. Armament. 2 20mm Type 99s. and then two 13.2 millimeter Type 3 MGs. Now we'll take a look at the modifications. You can carry some bombs. I don't know how many of you Japanese fighter pilots, turn fighters, carry bombs, but you've got universal rounds, ground targets, tracers, stealth rounds, and yeah, 5.3. A significant difference between the A7M1 and the A7M2. So it fits in between the A6M5 and the N1K2s, which are pretty damn good fighters. Haven't flown in a while though. And now we've got some Kpfw. We've got two Kpfw. We've got the Kpfw-1. Actually, I'm pretty sure we've got the Hay. Now where's the other one? Okay, there we go. The other one's a premium. So this one we already have in the game. Battle rating 2.7. This is the new one. It's got two, basically, it says four 12.7s versus two 12.7s and two 7.7s on the Kpfw-1. The Kpfw, and same battle ratings though, but significantly different armament. I would much rather have four 12.7s. Alright, so it looks like we've got two in the engine cowling and the nose, which will be firing synchronized, so they'd have a slower fire rate than the ones in the wings, which don't have to worry about the propeller. So you got two in the wings, two in the engine cowling and the nose. A gorgeous looking fighter. Looks very nimble and agile, like most Japanese planes tend to be. Alright, and then we've got the Kpfw-2 Otsu. So if you're a... what? Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, the Japanese have a ground attacker? Do we have HVAP rounds? Oh gosh. No HVAP? Oh, they're just Heffies. So basically, it's a bomber killer. I was hoping that these 40s, this has two 40mm main guns with only 10 rounds per gun. So you're going to want to be very accurate and probably sync your weapons so they have different buttons, so you're not whittling away with your 12.7s and you run out of 40mm because you have two 40mm and two 12.7mm main guns. No HVAP rounds or anything like that for the 40s right now, so it doesn't look like they'd be very effective in a ground attack role, but as far as shooting down enemy planes and specifically maybe bomber hunting, they should be pretty effective with those Heffy T rounds. Yeah, you can see the armor penetration is absolute shit, but that's because they're Heffy rounds and not HVAP rounds like that Horton Ho 30mm rounds that I showed off for the active camo stealth Ho video. If you haven't seen that, that's one of my favorite, actually that is my favorite skin in the game, and that's one of my favorite planes in the game, just for flying around in casually and leisurely ground attacking. But that's not why we're here. Looks like you can also carry up to 200 kilos of bombs on the Kpfw-2 Otsu, so that is something I'm very excited for. Big caliber cannons on fighters is something I think is fun. I mean, if you look at the British, you've got your, where are you at? The Hurricane Mark IV, which has 40mm Vickers, so these have 15 rounds per gun. And they also have the ability to fire, where are you at? Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Armor targets, so they can fire armor-piercing tracer rounds. Not HVAP or anything like that, but, you know, a little bit better, maybe, at ground attack. Well, obviously, definitely better at ground attack. But the Otsu doesn't have that at this point. Let's see, just to make sure we're not missing anything crazy. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with the Kpfw-4s once it's launched. So let's also... let's get out of here. We can't do custom battles. Feature's not available. Because there's two new maps. So that is really unfortunate. There's two new maps, Tunisia and the second Battle of El Alamein. These are both desert maps. I'll go over those in detail. I'm going to put up pictures on my Facebook, so if you'd like that, check out my Facebook. The link will be in the video description below. I highly encourage you to check that stuff out because I usually show previews and start discussions there. It's a pretty good pretty good forum for discussion, I think. Anyway, we're looking at a plane that is one of my loves. But anyway, let's get back to what I'm probably most excited about, and that's the British tanks. So they are all the tier 1 and reserve tier tanks. You know, that's how, when you introduce a new tree, that's kind of how they do it. That's what they did with the Americans, and that's what they're going to do with the British as well. No Japanese tanks yet. No other nations' tanks yet either. So let's go over the A13 Mark 1. Looks like you've got armor-piercing rounds, high explosive rounds, and you have an armor-piercing cap, ballistic cap rounds with 74 millimeters of penetration for this 40 mil main gun. That's pretty potent. Yep, armor-piercing cap. You've got the, let's see, let's take a look at it. Let's look at the armor. So, pretty boxy looking British tank. Now, 14 millimeters of armor is the strongest point, other than the gun barrel, obviously. The mantlet is also 14 millimeters, but it's a little rounded. But I mean, realistically, it's not going to do a whole lot. 7 millimeters of thickness on the sides. And then if we go into X-ray, we got ammo sticking everywhere right in front of these nice big flat plates. But let's be honest, at tier 1 and at the reserve tier, you know, armor and that kind of stuff, for the most part, isn't really all there. So that was the A13, and we're going to test drive some of these. Now we've got the Crusader Mark II. Let's take a look. I really like the look of these tanks. I don't know how effective they are. It also has a 40 millimeter QF 2-pounder, 110 rounds. You've got a 7.92 millimeter. Now, it only has one MG right here, but you can see that you have a hull mounted and a coaxial mounted machine gun. This is a very interesting. Look at this little turret, man. British really got creative. All right, and your strongest point is 30 millimeters from the front. Oh, 50 millimeters right here around where the radioman would be, or the driver rather. Yep, driver, machine gunner, and radioman. Primary, secondary weapon. So let's get back to the armor. 30 millimeters, 50 millimeters in these weird little strong points, and normally you may be like, oh, look at that. See, but there you go. Nice little weak spot, 18 millimeters. 20 millimeters here, that is a very flat, weak spot. You've got these, the extra, you know, side plating here, what the Germans would call Schürzen. But, some track guards here. 4 millimeters, can we see behind it? That's what I'm trying to do. And then 14 millimeters. So from the side, it's actually rather formidable when you consider you have these wheels. 14 millimeters. So from the side, right around here, not a good spot to aim for. A little bit of sloping here, which effective thickness at some points can really get high, almost up to, wow, effective thickness is pretty high. But gives a little bit of angling, a little bit of sloping, which helps in the armor. And obviously these tracks here, adding a little more, but why are you shooting there? Let's be honest. Unless you're shooting that and just happen to hit it, that would suck, and it's likely to happen at some point in the game. 12.7 from the top, and then 9 millimeters. So certain planes would definitely be able to pen this with machine gun fire. But hey, it's battle rating 2.0, should be expected. X-ray, where are you hiding all your ammunition? Ammunition's actually is stowed pretty well, I would say, in very safe parts of the tank. So as far as getting ammo racked, I think it's less likely. So this tank would be pretty good at not getting ammo racked, in my opinion. Because shooting through here, you got the 4 millimeter, you got the, what were they, 9 or 20? 15, somewhere in the middle there, and then the 14 millimeter. So if you think about ammos right along this line, not going to be able to really get a good option to shoot at it. Fuel tanks, engine, transmission, and the like. And look at the optics right here. So that is the Cruiser Mark II. We've got the Tetrarch Mark I. Let's take a look at you. Customization. This, I've got some thoughts on these glider-borne tanks. Look at how small this thing is. It also has a 40mm QF 2-pounder, 50 rounds, so much less ammunition stowage ability. 16 millimeters of thickness is the maximum. And you also have a 7.92 Besa machine gun. BESA. Look at that. 4 millimeters from the top. These things had to be light because they had to fit into gliders. That means, and it's also got a relatively high profile for a tank this small. But this all around, I mean, not going to be doing yourselves any favors, but it should be pretty quick. Relatively quick. Everything's packed nice and tightly. Flat surfaces galore. Hit ammunition, hit crew. This should not be a very difficult tank to knock out. I really think it would be great to see glider-borne tanks used as glider-borne tanks. And this is something I'm extremely, extremely excited about. The T-17E2. The first armored car we're going to get to play in War Thunder Ground Forces. Yep, once again, Puma hype, ladies and gentlemen. Puma hype. So it's got 250s. M2's Ma Deuce is here. Let's check out the armor. Nothing to really be expecting. 31. Holy shit. That's pretty damn good. Protecting the crew up and around the top. This thing looks like it's going to have maybe a potential issue with gun depression. Maybe a little bit. But it's going to be great at shooting down planes. This is, although it's an armored car, it's technically an SPAA. That's how it's going to be classified right now for the British, because it's the beginning of the SPAA, or self-propelled anti-aircraft artillery line for the British ground forces. Right here, a nice little weak spot, 15 millimeters, but honestly, the rest of this... See, this is actually somewhat strong. This would be a pretty good vehicle from the front, because that's halfway decent, and that's pretty relatively strong, plus it's sloped right there. Look at that. Effective thickness right there. Granted, fire a nice HE right here, so it shoots, activates there. Boom. So where you're storing everything, 3 crew members, your commander, your driver, and your aimer. Engine, transmission, ammunition tucked right in front of his nuts. So, and then finally we've seen the A-13 Mark II. I've got a really good realistic battle on this thing. Shot down a plane, shot down some tanks. Really enjoyed it. We'll take a look at it though. You've seen this bad boy in the game. It's got the 40mm QF 2-pounder, which I think is a very good gun. I think that's going to be a trend amongst British tanks, is pretty good guns. Maybe not the best armor for some of the lines, but then also really good armor for some of the other lines. It's going to be, you know, they've got the cavalry and their cruiser tanks, or their infantry and their cruiser tanks rather. Pretty sure that's how they distributed them. And then you've got the A-13, which is just a premium... the premium version of the reserve A-13 Mark I. So you got a nice yellow square. Hello, friends, and some nice little bits of detail. Smoke grenade launchers, which I don't think work yet. Let's check out the modifications. Armor piercing cap, ballistic cap rounds. Pretty standard stuff. Do we check the rounds here? Yeah, they're all QF 40mm 2-pounders here, so I don't think there's going to be too much difference in the rounds. Yep, all pretty much the same. Armor piercing round, HE round, armor piercing cap, ballistic round. So, looks nice though. So you know what? Oh yeah, and then last but definitely not least, the German Churchill. Isn't that funny? Right now in the dev server, granted, when the patch launches, the Germans will have some Churchills and the British will have some Churchills. But only one MG is mapped right now. This has a 57mm 6-pounder OQF Mark V. Tons of armor. Let's look at the armor. That's what I really want to see. But right after that, let's... So you've got armor piercing rounds, armor piercing cap, and an armor-piercing cap, ballistic cap that at 500 meters distance are just under 100 millimeters of penetration. And this one actually better penetration, but this has better fragmentation of the shell, so basically more likely to, more explosive filler, all that kind of stuff. More likely to really kill the tank in less hits. So now this is going to be the good part. 76.2. This is the armor. Oh, what the? They haven't mapped? They haven't mapped this little bit of armor on it. That's really interesting. I wonder how thick that is. It's not mapped. You see the treads, but see there's a difference right now. It's showing us the treads, but not this plate covering it right now. So what's the historical thickness of that point, ladies and gentlemen? But 20 millimeters on the track, 76.2 from the sides, 76. So 89 millimeters is going to be the thickest. A big old flat gun mantlet, though. If it was a little rounded, it'd probably be a little bit better. This is definitely a boxy, squarish, rectangular looking and armor tank. So you're not going to get too much effective thickness. Slight sloping here, but you can tell that the effective thickness is over 9,000. Not really, but it's over 381, which basically means you're shit out of luck there, mate. So 89 millimeters. Let's see. I would definitely hit there because even with effective thickness, it's less than 89. This little plate right here, and you've got this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful turret ring. Always a hot spot to shoot on almost any tank. From the top, though, relatively weak. This thing is going to be very vulnerable from the big cannon armed planes. 18 millimeters, guys. That's pretty damn thin for how big this is. Think about this. You could fire a big HE round, and that's only 15 millimeters of thickness. You could knock out, let's see. Let's look at them. This guy's dead. That guy's dead, man. But a gorgeous looking tank, man. How many of the Churchills did the Germans capture and use during World War II? That's a good question. So anyway, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the preview so far. Let's drive something real quick. Where is max speed 39, max speed 42, max speed 67 on the Tetrarch, max speed 88 kilometers per hour on the armored car, and that's 39, and that's 39. So you know what? Let's see. Let's do a little test drive. We'll do it in RB. Why not? Of the first armored car in War Thunder, ladies and gentlemen, the T-17E2 Arma 250s. Listen to that little engine purr, man. Alright, well, we're off-road right now, so we're definitely going to be affected by that. We need to get this baby on a road. Alright, let's... Gun depression is actually pretty good. Not the problem that I thought might happen, but I mean, I guess that makes sense, right? Oh, wow. That's a pretty damn good pen. Alright, so we're going to get ourselves on a road, a little dirt road, but a road nonetheless. We're going to allow this thing to get up into its higher gears. See how fast we can get it. Because right now we're only going 25 kilometers per hour. Now that was the paper statistic. Maybe the models and stuff, like, I know this was a big thing with planes when I first started doing patch showcases back in patch 1.29. Man, those were the days. Flight models were never, you know, oh, look at this plane, but it was, remember, like, vampires and stuff, like, you're like, oh, this is great, and it had like a MiG-17 flight model, and you're like, oh, and then it came out, and you're like, yeah, that kind of wasn't as good as I thought it would be. Anyway, so right now, that might not be how fast it goes, but we wanted to try it. Return to the hangar. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, let me know what specifically from patch 1.55 you'd like to see most. Let me know in the comments below. If someone else comments on the same thing, go ahead and up like that and let me know. And then I will go through them that way. That's how we'll sort them out. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Baron. Thank you guys so much for watching this first little bit preview on patch 1.55 on the dev server. Everything's subject to change, so just remember that. This is an armored car. We've got British tanks that aren't just premiums. We've got the MiG-17, the granddaddy of the jets right now. And we've got a Churchill for the Germans. We've got a T-44 with 122 millimeters for the Russians. Some big old heavy British Stirling bombers. And then we've got 4 new fighter aircraft for the Japanese, just to name a few. So let me know what you'd like to see the most, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Pull the trigger on the like button, share the video with a friend, and I'll see you soon.